Professor 𝗥𝗲𝗬𝗏𝗀𝗀. He is a finance professor at the Stern School of Business, New York University, and he has analyzed Adani in some detail. You can look at the link in the description window to understand a little bit more about where he is coming from and what he sees as the Adani ki Kahani. So you can take a look at that to get a better, deeper perspective. All I'm going to talk about today is a little bit more at the 20,000 level, 20,000 foot level, to try and explain to you what is it that is questionable about the way Adani has gone about growing his businesses. Remember, before 1994, no one had heard of Adani. No one. 1994. So since then, it's what, 28 years, and there are other companies that are 100 plus years old. And remember, when Reliance was shooting up, like I think in the 70s and 80s, the older established families such as Tatas, Birlas, Mafatlas used to say the same thing about Reliance. So you need to look at the whole thing with data. And this analysis is based on the more detailed analysis that Professor Damodaran has done. Now you cannot say that this is a white man's evaluation of Adani. This is somebody who's an Indian American and somebody just like me who's analyzing it. So please read it. Data is important. Where the data points to is important. You need to understand what is wrong. And you will get that idea once you read the article. And here we go. These are some of the Adani portfolio of companies. And AEL is the incubator. This is the one that essentially starts up a lot of other companies. And if you look at the percentages, there are two different colors. The one in blue is the Adani Exports, which is the incubator company, its investment in other startups. For example, it has 100% in ANIL, 50% in Adani Connex, 100% in AAHL under the transport and logistics, and ARTL also it has 100%. Now, if you look at their investment in energy and utility, you have the AGEL where they have 60% exposure, ATL where they have 74.2, ATGL 37.4. I mean, you get the idea. I don't have to repeat this thing. You can see this thing to figure out what I'm trying to tell. So the overwhelming thing that jumps out at you in this is that they have a very high percentage of ownership of the flagship company, that is the AEL, or even when it becomes a promoter, the numbers are very, very high in the 60s most of the time. The sectors that Adani has played in, these are, you can see they are in energy, infrastructure, primary industry. Now only recently they are going into the business to consumer, which is like e-commerce and so on and so forth. They have this one fast moving consumer goods and there's a Adani Digital that is coming up. Now, so all these companies, they seem to have a very high amount of ownership amongst themselves. This is one red flag. So in other words, they have not been vetted as thoroughly by external reputed firms as you might perhaps want to. Mundra Port was their first big venture. Now they own ports across Asia, Africa, and are expanding their footprint. And they are mostly in infra, which are long gestation period projects, which means it takes time for the return on investment. It's a lot longer time before you can see the return on investments. Now, here is one graph that I'm showing from the same article. You just take a look at the revenue growth versus the operating margin. Remember that a company such as maybe Google or Apple, their operating margins are 50 to 60, 65%. Very, very high. That is why they command a premium in the stock market. Now, if you look at the three phases, 2002 to 2015, the revenue grew at 24.45%. The operating margin was 7.16%. Now, the revenue slowed down between the period 2016 to 2021, and the revenue growth was only 3.1%, and the operating margin also fell down to 4.27%. The key thing to look at is the operating margin is going in the wrong direction. You would imagine, you would think that if Adani is in this sector, this sector, this sector, and this sector, and wherever there is intra-sectoral commerce, that because they've already got a footprint or a foothold there, that the efficiencies will grow. Every time they get into a new sector, it is expected that they know what needs to be done in that sector, having gained the experience from working in a similar sector before. Therefore, you would expect the operating margins to go up. The revenue can go up or down depending upon the demand, supply, and so on and so forth. Similarly, the most important thing is since 2021, their revenue growth rate has shot up to 112.7%, whereas the operating margin has come down even more to 3.6%. So this kind of tells you that either Adani has now decided that it will be pure play infrastructure player, which are all long time gestation projects. You will not see the return on investment in 10 years, 15 years, and so on. And therefore, whoever invests in Adani will have to be patient to realize the returns. If that is the case, then I think the Adani group needs to come out and come up with a white paper and say that these are the growth prospects, these are the places where we expect fast growth, and these are the places where we will be expecting steady but slow growth. Well, there is also the possibility that as it turns to raise more cash, that the same group will look at the same players such as the LIC. LIC has an exposure of about 4.2% to this entire Adani group. You can take a look at this again in that article. It's a very well written article, and it's because it comprises, it looks at it in 360 degrees. And really makes a good comparison of what are the market rates and what are the typical expectations of a conglomerate and so on and so forth. While I say all these things, it is important that Adani is making a bid for many of the ports in and around India because China has hegemonic claims and they have been gobbling up airports left, right, and center. In fact, India allowed them to own the Hambantota port. Now they own it for 99 years. Same with Gwadar, and they may have even taken control of Chabahar. There's some grayness there. I don't know exactly what is going on. Remember this, in China, every prefecture, which is I think like a district, equivalent of a district in India, has a construction company. And that construction company is trying to bid for construction projects across the world. China believes that they have the manufacturing efficiencies and that they can do it in the fastest time possible. Every time, you have these union workers stopping work or forcing stoppage of work in India, they need to understand that they are not helping anyone. They are not helping anyone. They are only harming and hurting themselves. Today, trade is global and any construction company from anywhere in the world could make a bid for construction in India also. The flyover coming near your house might be constructed by China. Because at some point, India will say, well, these guys are only taking 1/3 the amount that Indian companies are bidding. Therefore, I'm going to give the contract to the Chinese company. Adani has had a good record of delivering on all their projects. So far, they have been profitable, maybe not as profitable as you might like. But beyond that, what you need to understand is this is a data game. There is a problem about the regulators, about also the PSUs that are giving money, whether they are really gauging the risk before they get in. Also, it is my hope that if the Modi government allows entities such as LIC and SBI to lend more money to Adani, they should use the model that Warren Buffett used, like warrants that he used when Goldman Sachs came calling when they are on the verge of crumbling in 2008. Take a look at that, guys. Something like that will need to be drawn up. If the stock is going lower and lower, then the upside for LIC and SBI must be huge. Not just like a phone call, the finance minister or somebody from the finance ministry calls and the chairman says, okay, go and buy the stocks of XYZ without looking and doing due diligence. That's a no-no. I hope SEBI, LIC, all the RBI, all these people are now going to be more on their toes. It's easy for the finance minister to say everybody should be on their toes. What was she doing for so long? The funny part is that the finance minister really doesn't understand some of the nuances of SEBI. It's my opinion. I could be wrong. And I'll be happy if she proves me wrong. She can come on our channel and say, Sree, you are an idiot. You don't know anything about finance in India. This is how it works. And okay, fine. I'll listen to her. But I will also share with you a long monologue that is going to trace the NSE, the C company, how Chidambaram and his minions captured brick by brick the entire, SEBI, NSE, and all the other things around it, the stock market in a sense, that led to these participatory notes and the rigging of markets and so on and so forth. It's a separate monologue that's coming your way. Stay tuned on that. Please like, share, and subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to click on the bell button for notifications. Namaskar.